Hey everybody, welcome to day 2 of this Intimate Partner Violence Awareness Month Summit. You were just listening to some original music by recording artist ELN. You can get some more of that stuff later on today at the Blue Door Radio. You can also get some links to where you can follow up on that particular artist, but I am grateful to ELN for providing some music for this event. So today I am going to pick up right where I left off last night, and I'm going to talk about the role of anger in the overall experience of abuse, or the role that anger plays in abusive relationships. So if you came to my workshop last night, you remember I talked about the broken mirror, and that is a psychoanalytic way to conceptualize what happens when someone is an abuser, what they go through. I also talked about what happens from a behavioral perspective. I talked about it from an attachment perspective, and I talked about it from an environmental perspective, and did that so that we could really conceptualize the idea of abuse as an issue that touches on mental, physical, emotional, biological, and environmental factors. So it's a multi-tiered problem that will require a multi-tiered solution. And so for today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about anger, and we will learn to distinguish what anger is versus what abuse is. Of course, I do have my handy dandy PowerPoint presentation that I will be sharing with y'all to help keep me on track, as well as give you something to look at and take notes from. We will start from the current slide. And we will share our screen with our participants. Yes, we will. All right, so anger versus abuse. The goals for this particular lecture are to help you to be able to distinguish between the anger and the abuse as separate things that you can identify separately. They're not the same. Discuss the role that anger plays in abusive relationships, and then also finally to learn some strategies for managing anger without those outdated abusive tactics. So 3 goals. This one is not going to be like a very long drawn out lecture, but there will be some practice components at the end of this for y'all to engage in. So anger versus abuse. First and foremost, anger is an emotion, and it communicates wisdom to us about our experience. Anger is a source of wisdom. Anger is a source of information. Anger lets us know something very, very important about what we are going through. You can think of it as anger is the feeling that lets us know when we're being mistreated or when something is violating our personal boundaries. And there are actually 5 components to anger as an emotion. There are pre-anger feelings, there's some trigger thoughts, there are the actual anger feelings themselves, there's the impulse to act on your feelings of anger, and then there's the actual anger behavior itself. And we will explore each of those 5 in this workshop today. Abuse, however, is something completely different. It is not an emotion. It is actually a group of behaviors that are strategically deployed to gain and maintain power and control over other people. And the strategies are the same 8 strategies that I talked about last night. It's the physical, the sexual, the mental, psychological, the emotional, the economic, the use of intimidation, the use of privilege, and the use of invalidation. So Anger is an internal response to an external observation. Abuse is an external response to an internal observation. So the parts of anger, when you think about anger as like a syndrome or an experience, right? Like I feel angry. The parts of anger, we move through them very quickly, sometimes just like that. We notice something is an affront to us, and next thing you know, we are acting out as a way of managing that. But understanding the 5 parts of anger will help us all understand when we are going through them, and that will give us an opportunity to interrupt our habitual anger cycle. So first and foremost, we have these pre-anger feelings. The pre-anger feelings can involve physiology. So they can involve actual biological changes to the body. Pre-anger feelings also are feelings that, well, actually, if you've ever heard anger referred to as a secondary emotion, anger always comes with something else. The pre-anger feelings are those primary things. And so sometimes they can be painful feelings like shame and guilt or envy, jealousy, or sometimes they can be like, I feel disrespected, or I feel lost. And because of the presence of those feelings, anger also arrives. Within the context of masculine bodies or men or males, anger a lot of times has been the only or the safest, most socially acceptable feeling to display. And the ways that males or masculinized people have been taught to display that anger is through acts of aggression, throwing things, pushing things over, loud crashes and bangs, banging on the wall or the table, throwing things. Those were all considered socially acceptable ways for men to demonstrate emotion. And so while men might not have been allowed to show pain or sadness or guilt or remorse, anger was one of those things that we were always allowed to show up men with anger. The next part of this entire experience of anger are the trigger thoughts. These can include memories, these can include flashbacks, these can include the things that we ruminate on because of anxiety. So an example of a trigger thought might be, my partner's cheating on me. They did that on purpose. I talked to them about that before, and this is still a problem. Those are examples of trigger thoughts. Or I'm tired of having this conversation over and over and over again. Those are examples of trigger thoughts. And once you move through the pre-anger feelings and you arrive at the trigger thoughts, it's only a matter of time, to be very quickly, but it's only a matter of time before you run into the actual anger feeling. So just like all emotions, anger comes with an arousal of the autonomic nervous system. So in our autonomic nervous system, we've got the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the thing that is responsible for our arousal. It's responsible for our fight or flight response. Anger and anxiety both initiate this response, and it comes with an actual noticeable change in our bodies. So heart rate increases. When our heart rate increases, our respiration also increases. So we start to breathe faster as our heart is, beating faster. And so you might start to notice like angry people will pace, or people who are feeling anxious will also pace. It's because that fight or flight, clearly the flight in the case of pacing, has been activated. Interesting thing to know, anxiety has a tendency to activate the flight response until flight is not an option, and then aggression comes out. And anger will activate the fight response until fighting is no longer an option, and then that triggers the fleeing. So you can think about those two, anger and anxiety, as being cousins or twins, maybe. I don't know, however you want to think about it. But when the anger feeling is present, what happens is our sympathetic nervous system, which is here in the spinal cord, in the brainstem, and then branches out to like the rest of the body and the other parts of the brain, up in the amygdala and the hippocampus over here in this area. We can expect that's the area of the brain where like emotions fire, specific emotions, so to speak. So the sympathetic nervous system is the activating. We're gonna move faster, we're gonna move smarter, we're going to strategize with our thoughts, our words, and our movements. And then the parasympathetic nervous system is the part that cools us down and calms us down. So it's that thing that brings us back to level or back to baseline after we've been excited. Once you are in this place where the biology is participating with the emotional, it becomes a lot more difficult to think about other actions. So it's hard to think about things to calm you down when you are in the throes of sympathetic nervous system activation. It's not impossible, it's hard. So following the anger feeling is the impulse to act. And the impulse to act can be very quick or it can be very slow. An example of a slow impulse to act might be premeditated actions. Thinking, I would really love to slap you right now, or I'd really love to do this, or I would really love for that to happen. That represents the impulse to act phase of the anger puzzle. And so you can go from I want to slap you to actually slapping very quickly. Or you can think to yourself, you know what, I want to slap somebody. And if this happens again, I'm going to give it to them in the context of violence. And so the anger behavior is literally anything that you do to discharge a feeling of anger. So it could be screaming into a pillow, throwing a dish, giving someone a tongue lashing, throwing insults, throwing fists, breaking your controller, throwing video games, all those things are anger behavior. And so here's the thing. When it comes to the relationship between thoughts and behaviors, sorry about that. When it comes to the thoughts and the behaviors and the relationship between them, a lot of times, or very exclusively, it is our thoughts and the interpretations of the things that we experience that give rise to the feelings that we have and the behaviors that we use to discharge them. So if you think about life as an activating event, you thinking about that event and rendering an interpretation, having a feeling that is based on that interpretation, and then engaging in a behavior to help manage that feeling, right? That is the cycle of experience and behaviors. And when it comes to the trigger thoughts related to anger, what happens is our interpretations have a tendency to be things that perpetuate feelings of anger. So feelings love themselves, and anger loves itself the most. Maybe that's not fair to say, but think about the things that people do in the name of anger. Think about, conversely, the things that people do in the name of a feeling that's the opposite of anger. Right? Our interpretations have a tendency to be very, very powerful. So if you want to change the way that you manifest your anger in these anger behaviors, it takes some work doing some analysis on what your habitual anger responses are. When it comes to abuse, the goal is power and control. And wielding anger habitually in that way becomes a tactic, which is why the narrative, or which is one of the reasons why the narrative of anger being so linked to abuse has been so long-standing. But take a think for a second, just recall your anger responses to the people in your life. What is your anger response? What are your responses? Do you go from 0 to 60 because that's how long it would take you to go through the 5 parts of anger. What do? Do you have warning shots? Hey, I'm getting angry. This is likely to happen if this experience continues the way it is, if this activating event continues the way it is. Do you avoid or leave the situation? Do you shout? What is your habitual response to anger? If you want to remove the role that anger plays in abusive situations, one of the things that you have to do is learn how to interrupt your anger habits at any of these 5 parts. So when you are noticing pre-anger feelings like guilt, shame, loss, stagnation, you're noticing that maybe you are on the receiving end of some poor judgments when you compare yourself to other people, right? Bringing in that broken mirror thing. If you are having some pre-anger feelings about what's being reflected back to you from the world, that is an opportunity to interrupt your anger habit. Once you notice trigger thoughts, that is also an example of a time that you can interrupt that habit. So one way to interrupt trigger thoughts would be to use some positive self-talk, which is absolutely a wonderful coping skill to use to help you maintain your sense of composure, because a lot of times our thoughts will talk to us in ways that are not appropriate. I'll give you an example. Ask yourself this for a second. If your thoughts were somehow able to jump out of your body and form a new person, and they started talking to you the way that they talk to you, what would your best friend do to that person who represents the thoughts that you have and aim at yourself? Would your best friends be motivated to put them in their place? Would your family be motivated to tell this negative talking thought person to like go get a life? If you know for a fact that the people in your life would struggle with the way that you think about yourself, that's one way that you can recognize that it's not true and it's worth using a coping skill like positive self-talk to get yourself through it. Positive self-talk can mean creating mantras for yourself. I am whole, I am complete, this is why. People love me can be an example of positive self-talk. I do many things right is an example of positive self-talk. I don't know where that expectation came from, but I have no desire to live my life by it. Could also be an example of some positive self-talk that you can use to interrupt this anger pattern that you go through that might be undesirable. When the anger feeling becomes present, remember how I said it becomes a lot harder to think about things to do to get out of the anger feeling? Anger loves itself. There are things that you can do to engage your parasympathetic nervous system to help you calm down. Can put some ice cubes in both of your fists or just one of your fists and let them melt. Sounds weird, but it's totally legit. Put them in your hands. Your hands, the nerves, the cold receptors in your 5 senses in your hand will pick up on the fact that it's, cooling down time. So if you consider anger a very, very hot emotion, consider that putting ice cubes in your hand might be a way to dull that heat a little bit. You can also rub the ice cubes on the back of your neck. You can also engage in some deep, heavy breathing, which I will demonstrate in a few seconds. But there are different types of breath work that you can use to engage in your parasympathetic nervous system. And engaging in the breath work will also lower the heart rate and lower the blood pressure. When it comes to interrupting your habitual cycle of anger, once you get to the impulse to act phase and you are starting to contemplate what you want to do as a result of this anger, you can think about the things that you've always done and then start to think about the things that you would like to try. So if you're someone who habitually grabs a pillow and hits someone when you're feeling angry, you might pick a different tactic. A lot of times it's hard to think about new tactics when you have habitual ones that you really go to. But keep in mind that anything that's different from what you're already doing does represent growth and change in a different and potentially more positive direction. So if you're going to decide that you're not hitting people with pillows anymore, and instead you just want to flick at their face from across the room, right? Like, made me angry, right? That is a remarkable, different growth, change, and you still get to be true to the fact that you have an anger feeling there. Because it is very important to stay true to the feeling that's present while you are deciding how to manage it. Because attempts to avoid, control, suppress, repress feelings of anger makes anger a lot hotter, right? So if you think about repressing anger, like putting the lid on some boiling water, like when you take the lid off, like eventually all the steam's gonna come out, all the vapor is gonna come out, and that steam and that vapor is going to be hotter a lot of times than the water itself. So repression, avoidance, and experiential control for anger doesn't work. And it actually makes it more likely for abusive behaviors to fire because of that pressure. So consider, what do you want to do different when you are in that phase, contemplating your impulse to act? Choose a different behavior. Once you have your list of new behaviors that you want to do in the presence of anger, pick one, pick anyone, and do it and see what happens. Do that over and over and over again, switching out your anger behaviors, making a strong commitment to not engaging in the behaviors that you used to behave in, right? So within the context of abuse, maybe you will not hit your partner when you are angry, or when you're trying to get them to fall in line and represent a better image in that fractured, broken mirror. Maybe you won't hit your partner anymore. Maybe you'll try something different that's not any of these 8 strategies. Maybe instead of, excuse me, maybe instead of dealing with your envy or jealousy in a relationship, you'll stop using sexual abuse tactics on your partner and instead opt for something different. Maybe instead of, feeling overcasted by your partner's achievements at work or in other parts of their life, instead of, going to the emotional abuse tactics, instead you choose something different that helps you get your needs met a little bit more. When it comes to, actually, I don't need this anymore. That. Stop the sharing. When it comes to managing, like the skillful management of anger, there are a lot of things that we can do aside from interrupting that anger cycle. And there are changes that can be reflected in a lot of the ways that we live our lives on a regular basis. So we can adopt a nonviolent communication stance where we automatically, from one point on, decide that in all of our communications with ourselves and with other people, we are only going to communicate from a place that expresses our needs and not from a place of blame or judgment. So nonviolent communication in a relationship with a partner might be, instead of saying, you're very lazy and you don't take out the garbage, right? Like that is a violent way of communicating. You might say, hey, I need you to do a better job, or I need you to do more work around taking the garbage out because I'm starting to feel some kind of way and it's triggering some anger thoughts in me, right? Like that is a more nonviolent way to get your need across without making this thing your partner's problem. Because everybody in the house is an adult, and if you see the garbage there, take it out. Don't wait a week and be like, I just want to see what my partner's doing, and then get mad that the garbage was in the garbage can in the kitchen all week, right? We're all adults here. You see the garbage, take the garbage out. If it's a principle and you want or need your partner to be doing more sweat equity, pull their weight in the house a little bit more, then that is what you do instead of taking their credit card, instead of causing a fight between them and their friends, instead of demeaning them or putting down everything that they do as a partner, as a wife, as a love interest, as a husband, right? Instead of saying, like you're no good, you don't do right, like you don't take out the garbage, that. Actively work on getting out of the courtroom. So all of the evidence that you have that makes your partner an inadequate partner, all of the evidence that you have that makes your kid a not worthy kid, or a kid who doesn't pay attention or who doesn't try their hardest, all of the evidence that you have against the person that you care about, that is your intimate partner, or your interpersonal partner, all that evidence, get rid of it, throw the evidence away, and instead get to the heart of the matter. Hey, son, I feel like, I get the impression that when you bring home C minuses, you're actually not applying yourself as hard as you could be. I think that you can do a lot better. I've seen you do a lot better. And I'll be a lot more proud. I'll be a lot easier on you. And I'll be a lot less likely to take away your privileges if you can do a little better on your report card or a little bit better on these tests. There was nothing punitive about what I just said. I acknowledge that my kid has done better in the past and that this new behavior is not reflected in who they are and who I know them to be. So I'm able to validate that. And then in the meantime, I can still make a request for continued advanced behavior. All the while noting that my kid has a mind of his own and is either going to work harder or is not going to work harder. And depending on that choice will depend on how I, as a parent, respond. Okay, still bringing home C minuses. You had the first half of your year, you got all A's and B pluses, and now you're bringing home C minuses. Are you struggling now? Is the work too hard? Do we need to meet a different need for you? Are you too distracted? Are too many outside curriculum activities getting in the way of school? Is there too much going on at home? Do you need more time or space to study? Do we need to reorganize your chore chart so that you handle your chores at a different date and time in the week so that you have more time to focus on your homework? Part of the nonviolent communication component is recognizing that the folks around us do not actually reflect who we are. That's not a real thing that happens. That is something that we pick up on because of our relationship to our own narcissism. I'm so good, everyone around me has to reflect that same goodness. Meanwhile, I'm actually not that great to begin with. I'm abusive, I might be using substances problematically. My kids are not doing that great in school and I can't figure out how to motivate them to do better. And my partner, for whatever reason, can't get it through their head to put the laundry in the dryer after it comes out of the wash. Right? Those are examples of the stressors that are reflected back to an abuser using the broken mirror lens. And all those become reasons to engage in habitual anger and abuse tactics. So after some soul searching, anyone can decide, maybe I do want to handle my anger differently. Maybe some of the tactics that I do engage in are a little bit problematic, are red flags, not calling anyone an abuser, not calling anyone problematic. However, using this as a guide, everyone is free to determine to what degree they want to change the behaviors that they do engage in when anger is present. Because anger is a part of the human condition, but abuse is not. All right. At this time, I am going to open up a guided meditation that is meant to be relaxing, and it's meant to bring you into contact with the present moment right now. So I'm going to pull that up on YouTube, and then I will cue everybody as to when to get started. Are there any questions so far? If there are, you can unmute yourselves and start to ask. All right, no question.
Okay, I do have a question. I have a question.
All right, go for it.
Okay, now you were, what was I gonna say? You were saying how to change your thought patterns in regards to, fight or flight or your within anger and changing the thought patterns. Okay, would that is that just almost the same as like all right, how can I put it? It's like, you know how I've always said you can brainwash if you can brainwash yourself with something negative, you can brainwash yourself with something positive. So would that be a form of like changing your thought patterns, like listening to positive things and doing positive things instead of doing the negative things?
So yeah, listening to positive things, surrounding yourself with positive things is actually an example of changing your environment.
Okay.
So listening to music is an external thing. Putting on clothes that you like is an external thing. Reading things that increase your relationship to your own good self-esteem is an environment or an external thing. The
Mhm.
changing your thoughts thing is on purpose. Whenever you are having an experience, you take a note of what your first thought is, and then you come up with some alternative explanations for what could be happening. So one of my favorite examples about changing thoughts or about reframing thoughts, it involves an experience that like a lot of us have had in our lives. So if you think about a time, maybe it's Thanksgiving, maybe you've done a pretty good job at making sure you have all the stuff that you need for your Thanksgiving dinner in advance. However, there's a few things or a bunch of things that you didn't account for. And so you have to go to the grocery store on Thanksgiving Day. It's crowded. While you did a good job at making sure you didn't have a whole grocery list of things to do, other people, however, have carts and carts and cartloads full of things. And so the grocery store is ungodly busy,
Mhm.
crowded, which is already a problem because so many people. That's one thing. And so that's an example of a pre-anger feeling. It's like, oh man, there's a bunch of people in this grocery store. Boom, it's already started. You're in the grocery store. You've got your little hand basket because you're not doing a lot of shopping. So you got your little cart. When you go into your aisle, you got your little spices, you got your flour, like you needed some nutmeg or some, vanilla for the candied yams, or you needed another, you needed some more eggs for the cornbread stuffing, whatever, any of that. And so you're doing your shopping and you're minding your business, and you feel a little clip on the back of your heel, and you automatically know that in this busy ass grocery store, someone's careless ass done managed to run into you with the cart.
Go ahead, yeah.
Boom, moment. There's already an interpretation here. I know you saw me,
All right. What happened to the word excuse me? Yeah.
right? I know you saw me. You
Mhm.
know this is a busy ass grocery store, so how come you weren't being more careful? All those things start to flood in.
Okay.
But then you turn around to see who actually hit you. And you see an old woman with thick glasses on, with her list up to her face, and she's reaching up really high to get something that she can't quite reach. A lot of folks might be more likely to let go of their anger and change their interpretation right there based on that.
Right, right, right. Of course.
Some people still might be like, this old bitch need to get it together.
Wow.
Some people, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Let's say it's the same situation. You get clipped on the back of your heel. You turn around and you see a mom who is shopping and putting stuff in her cart, but she's got a kiddo, maybe like 10, 11 years old, who's like playing with the cart, and there's a baby in the cart too. So the kid's keeping the baby occupied, and the cart hit you. There might be a completely different interpretation from the be more careful, so on and so forth. You might be like, hey, get your kids, like it's too crowded in here to be like that.
Mhm.
Or you might say, oh, it's okay, sweetie, just like be a little careful next time. Like depending on, what your orientation is, like your response will be different.
Mhm. Mhm.
But still, if you turn around and you see someone who's maybe your age, a little bit younger, clearly much like is a mature adulthood age, late teens, they're on their phone, they're being careless, like they don't even act like they remember that they even had a car, like they're texting, not necessarily even looking at the list on their phone, like all these things that we assume they're doing because they're a little bit younger, they're looking at their phone, and we have an injury now, like we just got clipped with a shopping cart. That is likely to give rise to a different response still.
Mhm.
And so when it comes to changing your thoughts, you catch yourself in that moment and you remind yourself there could be a lot of interpretations for this thing that is happening. there are some unhelpful thinking styles that can get in the way of changing the way that we think, or that can kind of trip us up. So there's like all or nothing thinking. So you're either rude or you're polite. You clipped me and you didn't say excuse me, you're rude. I'm angry. That's all or nothing, right? Like, what else? The mental filter, where you only take in information that serves the current point of view that you have. So you should have been careful. Why? 1, it's crowded. 2, these aisles are slim. 3, you have a big old cart. 4, you see there are other people around. All those are reasons that you should have been way more careful. And the mental filtering part is that there isn't any room for you, like, oh, wait, maybe someone else like pushed the cart by mistake when they were passing, or maybe they let go of the cart thinking that it was going to stop, but the cart was too heavy and it kept rolling by mistake, right? Like, we can critically think a lot of different things to arrive at different interpretations of our events. We have to build a commitment to ourselves to actually doing it. Right? I won't always jump to the most negative conclusion every time, or I will work on challenging my negative conclusions that I jump to. And so jumping to conclusions, mind reading, those are other examples of unhelpful thinking styles. Discounting the positive, only using information that is negative to help you with your decision making, or help you determine your mood. And those are all examples of unhelpful thinking styles that can get in the way. And interestingly enough, unhelpful thinking styles can also be things that prevent escape from abusive relationships. Unhelpful thinking styles might also be the things that prevent us from using our prayers and our magic to impact our lives. So if I'm not good enough, maybe God won't listen to my prayer. If I'm not good enough, maybe my spell won't work. If I'm not good enough, maybe this relationship is the best that I could have. So being aware of how your thoughts are slanted will be beneficial over a wide variety of situations, not just in the context of being in an abusive relationship, healing from abuse, or being an abuser. But becoming aware of your thoughts and how they function also becomes essential in setting goals and manifesting your desires.
Okay.
All right, so that was a great question. And I do now have the meditation that I was talking about. So if you would all please just go ahead and close your eyes. And start to just breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. So in this activity, there will be someone speaking for part of it, or there will be someone speaking during it. And the goal is to follow their instructions. But before we get going, I do want to introduce to you some breath work that you can add to your mindfulness meditations to help build a dynamic experience. So breathing is a very essential component to us being alive. It's so essential that our brain makes us do it without us having to think about it. Because some of us would forget to breathe and then pass out. That would happen. And there are a lot of things that could happen that would draw our attention away from, okay, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. So breath work is one of those things where when you start to do it on purpose, it can help to transform your current experience. So there are types of breath that you can engage in to help yourself feel more energized and alert and awake. There's types of breathing that you can engage in to help to engage that parasympathetic nervous system and help you cool down and calm down. Today, the one that I'm going to give you is a very basic one. It's a fourfold breath or circle breathing. It's very basic. Everyone knows it. It's in through the nose for the count of 4, out through the mouth for the count of 4. Now I want you to breathe in through your nose. Really pay attention to the feeling of your diaphragm expanding, almost to the point where you're like pushing it out and you can feel that pressure a little bit. That awareness is important. And when you exhale, exhale fully, flattening your stomach and, allowing that full diaphragmatic process to happen. So it's in through your nose, 2, 3, 4, out through your mouth, 2, 3, 4. In through your nose, out through your mouth. In through your nose, and out through your mouth.
Hey there, and thanks for gifting yourself these next few minutes. It's important to remember that you're a priority, and allowing yourself even just a few short minutes of intentional reflection can really have a positive impact on the rest of your day. So let's use these next few minutes to come back to center and set an intention for the rest of your day. Move into a comfortable position, whether you're seated at your desk at work or laying on the couch at home, and gently close your eyes and shift all of your attention onto your breathing, taking slower, deeper breaths than you've taken all day so far. Taking a deep breath in through your nose and slowly letting it out through your mouth. And continuing to breathe that way, feeling your lungs expand out as you inhale and contract back in as you exhale. Tune into your body, noticing how it feels. Noticing if there's anything that it's trying to tell you. Notice any place of tension or tightness in your body. Give those areas permission to relax, sending love into those areas. Thank your body for taking such good care of you, and let it know that it's okay to rest and relax for these next few minutes. You may notice that your mind starts to wander off. That's okay. That's natural. Just notice it and bring your attention back to your body, using your breath as your anchor. Try to picture one thing that's happened today that's made you smile, or made you thankful or appreciative. And just let that feeling fill you up for a moment. Breathe that feeling in from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. And allow yourself to smile if that feels natural. Now focus on something that you can do today, whether it's for yourself or for someone else, that will allow you to continue feeling this way. It could be something as small as deciding to go to bed early tonight, so that you have time to finally read that book that's been on your bedside table. Or the joy of getting dinner with a close friend. What's one little thing you can plan for your day to bring that intentional joy to it? Now just focus on that for a few minutes. Sit in that feeling of joy and peace. Now let's take a few more deep breaths together. A deep breath in, feeling your lungs expand out as you inhale, and everything contract back in as you exhale. Again, an even deeper breath than the one before it, holding that breath for a beat, and exhaling everything out. Last time, your deepest breath yet, sending that breath through your entire body. And exhale it out. And in your own time, slowly bring your awareness back to where you are. And thank yourself for taking these few minutes to just be intentional and kind to yourself. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, start to bring yourself back in. Maybe wiggle your hands and your toes, blink, do some neck rolls, get that out there. 5-minute mindfulness meditation, guided or unguided, focusing only on your breath, can lower your blood pressure, engage in that parasympathetic nervous system, leading to feelings of calmness and coolness and collectedness. Can also help you increase your focus overall throughout the day. And it's a great kind of way to regularly set your intentions for how your day is going to be or how you want your day to go. This is a practice that you can include as a part of any daily devotional, and you can use that as a moment instead of basking in feelings of joy. You can spend those moments basking in the presence of God and the work that that does in your life, and how handling that connection does strengthen you to do a lot of things, including managing yourself and moving out of abusive strategies, or empowering yourself to set firmer boundaries to get out of abusive situations. So mindfulness of the present moment can absolutely have a ripple effect in your life like that. And then, of course, mindfulness is a great precursor to any ongoing kind of thing. So mindfulness before any prayer, mindfulness before any meal, mindfulness before any chore increases the level of overall mindfulness or attention to the present moment that you experience, and makes you better able to make decisions that are values-based and move you more towards the person that you want to be, or more towards the representation of divinity that you want to be. So take that practice, use it as you see fit, add it to some of the stuff that you're already doing. I do know that mindful meditation is like the low bar, like kind of ground level thing. However, if you're trying to start change, coming in at the ground floor is going to be super duper helpful. And it's always good to go over the basics for those who have been studying and practicing and praying and meditating for a long time. Mindfulness meditation is a great way to try some of the tried and true practices that have supported you right now in the present moment with new circumstances. Because many of us who learned how to meditate did not learn to meditate during a pandemic. We did not learn to meditate during certain situations that are present right now. So going back to the basics like this is a great way to fortify your current practice and help you weed out the stuff that has not been working, or trying things that work better or faster, quicker, more in line with what you want to be doing. So I do encourage y'all to try that at least 3 times a week if you're here for it. Well, yeah, so that's the lecture, that is the application, and that's the skill practice. Any other questions or comments?
Yes. So I had a question about the mindfulness meditation. And you know how people say you don't have to meditate lying, sitting in your lotus position. You don't have to, you could do it lying down, what have you. Is there a reason why when you do breathing practice that you in through the nose, out through the mouth, is it possible to just do either or, like both nose, both mouth, or is that why it's mindful is because you're switching between the two?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can do mindfulness practices, and you can do the breath of fire, which is only through the nose. You can plug up a single nostril. Is a form of breath work, and that is one of those types that's like really invigorating. The laying down thing, it's a great way to trigger your brain into getting you into those like levels of brain waves that we want, right? So like when we meditate, when we astral and all that, like we want that change in brain waves. However, laying down makes it a little bit harder for our brain to be like, okay, we're stopping at a certain wavelength. We're not going all the way into rapid eye movement. So laying down can become a handicap or a disadvantage at first. But laying down while you meditate does increase the parts of your body that are touching other things. And that can become something to be mindful of as well. So like your back on the ground, or your back against the tree, or like your head on the tree stump, or, you know, one leg is up in the air because you are meditating, you know, with your back on the floor and your feet still on your bed. Like any of these like weird things that we do to like change up our experience can impact the experience with mindfulness. I recommend trying all of them. And I do absolutely recommend doing different things with your breath. There's I know Agni is hot breath, fire breath, and you do it with a very specific diaphragmatic movement that helps propel the breath in and out of the body. So yeah, if whatever your goal is for your meditation practice, you can pair that with a different kind of breathing. Almost like whatever your goal is for your prayer, you pair that with different kinds of correspondences. Here for it. Good question.
Thank you.
Any others? All right, folks. Well, then I will call it for today. Our next event is Radio Blue Door, and that's some music that is in the theme of domestic violence, intimate partner violence. There's some original music by ELN and also by David Loren, who did give me some music for that for this purpose as well. And you'll be able to check out where you can get some more information on those artists, as well as how you can support their work. And so, yeah, that is Radio Blue Door, and that is happening today, probably at like 6 o'clock, I think. No, 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock is Blue Door Radio, and then 6 o'clock is the Speak Out with Rebecca Spirit. As a heads up, the Speak Out is a place where anyone who wants to can come and actually discuss their experience with the topic matter. So it's a lot less talking by the Blue Door presenters and specialists, and more about community acknowledgement and experience with the topic matter. So if you know folks who would experience or who would benefit from getting some stuff off their chest with some other folks who are getting some stuff off their chest, it's a great place to have them come. Again, I will be there with Rebecca. I'll be acting as co-host, bouncing any trolls or things that are not conducive, because I do want to make sure that that stays, you know, a conducive place for those who want to participate. So you can share the Speak Out link. It is under Rebecca Spirit's link on the Blue Door event page. So you can share that link. You can share the Zoom meeting across the platforms that you're a part of. But yeah, like have some folks come in and participate. There's no mandate that folks have to have their camera on. So if people want to be anonymous and have their cameras off and still participate in the Speak Out, that'll still be appropriate and acceptable. So that is the Speak Out at 6 o'clock with Rebecca. And then those are the final two things for today. That'll wrap up day 2. And we will meet back here tomorrow at 12 o'clock, where I'll be talking about handling criticism. Tomorrow there will also be a 3 p.m. by Danielle Ellis called Getting Up. Then Clearing the Road with Hecate by G.V. Maldonado. And then I'll be wrapping it up at 6 o'clock tomorrow with the closing remarks. You can expect for me to be done by like 6:30 tomorrow. I'm not dragging it. I'm really just gonna come and thank people, do a recap of all the things that we've talked about this weekend, and close it up. Because we got work in the morning on Monday, so we won't be dragging it. But that's it for this particular presentation. Thank you all for coming, showing up. And until next time, blessed be.
Thanks for having